Today, we're going to get into the architecture of a really specific mindset. We're talking about the psychology of people who just find it impossible to ask for help. And hey, if that sounds like you, then this is really going to hit home. Does this question just get you? You know that feeling, right? You're completely drowning in whatever's going on, but the actual words, "I need help," feel like they're physically stuck. Well, you're not alone in that, and believe me, there's a really good reason for it. Okay, let's break this down because this is the absolute core of the misunderstanding. On one side, you have what the world slaps on you as a label: stubborn, arrogant, or even self-sabotaging. But the psychological reality? Oh, it's way more complex and, frankly, a lot more interesting. We're actually talking about extreme autonomy, a seriously sophisticated survival mechanism, and a pretty rare psychological marker. So let's start by unpacking that silent struggle, that contrast we just saw. The difference between being called stubborn and actually having radical autonomy, between being seen as arrogant and actually operating from a place of survival. That creates this huge gap between how people see you and what is really going on inside your head. And this right here, this just nails it. It's not some kind of choice or just a preference. It's a deep, gut-level, instinctual barrier. For someone who's hyper-independent, asking for help can feel like you're breaking a fundamental rule, a rule that has literally kept you safe your entire life. So, where does a wall that high even come from? I mean, you're definitely not born with it. To really get it, we have to look back at the original blueprint, your personal origin story. Because this isn't a flaw in your personality, it's an adaptation you learned. And here is the key concept. Your hyperindependence is a very sophisticated survival mechanism. It's a behavior your brain literally built to navigate a world where relying on yourself wasn't just, easier. It was the only option you could truly count on to survive. These are some of the most common things that forge this mindset. Maybe you were raised by parents who were pretty hands-off, or maybe you went through some really tough stuff as a kid that taught you not to depend on anyone. Maybe you always felt like the black sheep who had to figure it all out on your own. You see the common thread here, right? You learned a critical lesson, and you learned it early. The only person you can rely on 100% of the time is you. So how does the brain get wired this way? Well, it's a pretty simple but really powerful process. First, you have an experience, or maybe a bunch of them, where asking for help ends in disappointment or worse, judgment. Your brain clocks that as a threat. So what does it do? It adapts. It learns that relying on yourself is just safer and way more effective. And over time, that becomes the new default setting. Autonomy is now the brain's automatic go-to move for any problem that comes your way. So what happens when this deeply hardwired way of being bumps up against the outside world? Well, that's where the friction starts. This intense need for autonomy, it doesn't always mesh well with society's expectations about teamwork and, fitting in. And here's the bottom line. The real reason society often has a problem with hyper-independent people is actually pretty simple. You're unpredictable, and you are unmanageable. Think about it. If you don't need anything from anyone, you can't be easily controlled or manipulated. Now, this is where it gets really interesting. Look at this contrast. Society expects you to just follow the manual, but your own internal compass is better. They want you to hang around waiting for approval, but you're already 5 steps ahead of the game. You're supposed to just fit into the typical 9-to-5 mold, but you instinctively reject any norms that just seem like total nonsense to you. Okay, so we've covered the what and the why. Now let's get to the most important part of all this, reframing this whole thing. Let's stop looking at it as a weakness and start seeing it for what it is, a hidden and pretty formidable superpower. It all kicks off right here with that simple refusal, that inability to ask for help. Just think of that as the trigger for this powerful chain reaction. Because when you refuse to wait for someone else to fix your problem, you're forced to act. You become your own teacher, your own expert, your own troubleshooter. And the result? Over time, you brilliantly build this incredible library of rare and diverse skills that most people, the ones who always just wait for help, they never develop. We can call that the polymath advantage. So this advantage, it breaks down into 3 core strengths that are unbelievably valuable in today's world. Let's take a quick look at each one. First up, superior emotional regulation. And this makes perfect sense, right? If you're not constantly looking to other people for reassurance or validation, you become your own stable anchor in any storm. You can stay calm when everything is chaotic because your emotional state doesn't depend on what anyone else is doing or saying. Second, you've got advanced strategic observation. Because you're used to operating alone, you're not caught up in all the noise and drama of group work. You're often the quietest person in the room, but you are anything but passive. You're gathering data, you're watching the dynamics, and you are seeing the critical truths that everyone else is too busy talking to notice. And finally, there's the M-shaped edge. This is your secret weapon for the long game. Because you had to, you became a specialist in multiple, often totally unconnected fields. That makes you perfectly built for a future where the ability to teach yourself and master new skills is the most valuable currency there is. All right, let's pull all of this together and start embracing a new reality. It's time to stop feeling like you need to apologize for your independence and start actually recognizing its power. You've probably felt pressured to be more social, to have a huge circle of friends. But you need to understand this. Your preference for a small, tight-knit group isn't a flaw. It's a choice. You've learned the hard way to value depth and real reliability over the empty noise of a large social network. And look, if there is only one thing you take away from all this, please let it be this. If you have ever, for even a second, felt like you're too much or that something is just wrong with you, know this: you are not broken. You are a blueprint for a rare and powerful kind of self-reliance, one that was forged in the fire of your past. Ultimately, the moment you stop seeing your independence as some kind of problem and start seeing it as your greatest asset, you become truly unstoppable. Because at the end of the day, autonomy isn't about being isolated. It's the